شغلنا.
اها اها تمام. But there is an example. I think you need to.
الأرز.
أحسن المايك خلاص.
اوكي من الأرز. بس كده تمام واضح الفيديو. إذا بغيت الماوس
أو هكذا
هكذا الحاجة. أيوة خلاص.
هكذا.
إيه قريب.
كيف؟ بكتب بس. ايش المشكلة؟ This was a problem yesterday. We fixed it very quickly, but today it's taking longer time. It's still there. It's failed. دكتورة اسمها for the photo. يمكن كيف اسمها for the photo.
كم سنة؟
Shall we try? دكتورة عزة, can you check the inside?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. So, assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We're delighted to have Professor Janet Watson joining us as our speaker. Her talk, Fieldwork, Chance Change, will take us on a journey through the 4 decades of fieldwork she has conducted through her research years in Southern Arabia. And for a short bio note, Professor Watson held the leadership chair for language at Leeds at the University of Leeds from 2013 to 2024. She was the co-director of the Center for Endangered Languages, Cultures and Ecosystem. She is a fellow at the British Academy. And throughout her distinguished career, she held academic positions at the University of Salford, Durham, Edinburgh, and has been a visiting professor. Yes, okay. So she has also been a visiting professor at the universities of Heidelberg and Oslo. She's currently an honorary professor at the University of St. Andrews in the UK and a visiting researcher at SKU here. Her research focuses on modern South Arabian languages and Yemeni Arabic dialects in particular, with an emphasis on theoretical and phonological and morphological approaches. And among her key publications, we have Phonology and Morphology of Arabic, which is an important reference for researchers interested in Arabic linguistics and dialectology. She published The Structure of Mehri, another detailed linguistic account of Mehri language, and Taghamk Afiyat, which is a course in Mehri of Dhafar with Abdullah al-Mehri et al. And more recently, she published Language and Ecology in Southern and Eastern Arabia, which is edited with John Lovett and Roberta Morano. And now, without further ado, I want you to please join me in welcoming her to present the talk, again, Fieldwork, Choice, Chance, and Change. The floor is yours.
Yeah, many thanks. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. Is someone checking the Zoom? Because there have been because there have been times when I've given talks and I've got 5 minutes into the talk before I realised that no one could hear me. So I just hope that people on the Zoom can hear. Yeah, great, brilliant. So Choice, Chance, Change. This title I took from Blevin's evolutionary phonetics, phonology. She had changed, chance, choice. It works for her theory of language change, and it works for my fieldwork story as well. And I first started to think about writing this when I was coming back from Salalah in December now, 2021. I'd been in the field for 2 months, and a month of that time I'd spent with my PhD student, Andrea Boom, and I had my phonetic equipment with my digital recorders and things, and I just thought how much things have changed. It's time to have a look and see what we've gained, what we've lost, what has actually changed. So I'm going to look at my story goes from northern Yemen to southern Yemen to Dhafar, and I'm going to look at collaboration. I don't want to forget, but at the end, I'm going to tell you about a children's book that I've written with Abdullah al-Mehri called Salim and His Shadow, which is written in Mehri with English translation. And these are for sale after the talk.
How much?
I think 3 riyals or something, 3 riyals probably. They're quite cheap, yeah. But it's the first children's book in Mehri as a book. We've done ebooks before, but this is the first actual book in the hand. Okay, so I went into the field first in 1985 with no training. I had a diploma in linguistics from SOAS, the University of London, and a very sketchy knowledge of Yemeni dialects. I remember sharing a taxi in Twelgar in Sana'a with the Hungarian ambassador. So this is a picture of a map of Yemen, and it's North Yemen that I was looking at, because at that time Yemen was split into the north and south. And I remember thinking, where should I choose to do my field work? I wanted to go to the peninsula. I love mountains. I love the sea. I love topographical diversity and rural areas. And at that time, Yemen was 82% rural. So it was a pretty good place to go. There was going to be a lot of, and pretty relatively densely populated for a rural area. So there was going to be a lot of dialect diversity. And then when I was still thinking, my friend Louise, who I'd studied with at university, said, go to Yemen. I was born there. So that was decided. But I had linguistic reasons as well for my choice. And one of them was the fact that you get K dialects, and I'll talk to you about what K dialects are in the area, and some really interesting pausal phenomena. What happens in what's actually happening there. And you get a lot of languages that have specific things that happen before pause, but these were quite interesting. So I've got a couple of maps from, I don't know whether you can see that, you probably can't help. But the shaded area shows dialects, that areas where dialects end in K in the perfect for the first and second person. So instead of katabt, for example, you'd say katabk or katubk. Yeah. And you can see that they're through those western mountains up into the north. And at one stage we thought that they weren't found beyond the border with Saudi Arabia, but in fact they are found beyond the border with Saudi Arabia. So that's quite interesting, but apparently nowhere else in the Arab world. So you'd get things like absurd, I saw, instead of absurd. Yeah. And you'd get a distinction between the first person and the second masculine singular. So absurd, I saw, but absurd, you masculine singular saw. Yeah. And then this shows the different, I can share the slides later because you're not going to be able to read this, but it shows the different variations. So you get with the K dialects and the non-K dialects. And these maps are from Peter Beinstedt, 1985. And then this one is for pausal phenomena, where you get pausal glottalization. And my husband James will always say, I know when you've come back from Yemen because you then speak English, you speak English with a Sonani accent. I don't think I can do it now, but I would do it. And you'd then look at me and say, is that English? Perhaps not. Anyway, so pausal glottalization, if you get something like man is rajal, it would be raja. Sa, to go, sa. Kabir, kabir. Yeah. And then here, what you've got here is pausal nasalization. And there is some overlap between pausal nasalization and pausal glottalization. And that circle there that I've circled, you get, so the nasalization you get with the high vowels, I'm going to play you something. Nasalization you get with E, final E and final U. More dialects have just final E, some have final E and final U, as in that circled area there. So I'm going to play you this. And you'll hear, before the pause, you'll hear, whoops, why is it not playing? I need the sound. Sorry? Yeah?
Where's your Zoom?
Zoom here.
Zoom here or there? The Zoom in can move.
Where's the mouse? Oh, if I go like this,
No, where's the Zoom?
the zoom's here.
Wait.
Zoom.
Hold on. Why is this one not working?
I don't know. Maybe we just need to use this.
Hold on. You didn't tell me about that. That is right.
Oh.
Right. Is it important to play it?
Oh, pretty important because there's quite a few of them, but it doesn't matter, I suppose.
You have it on PC, on anti-flash, on video. Video. Can we have it here? Can we have it?
I don't know how you can get it on there.
I know.
What are you doing? We need to close this.
What are these? أيمن كيف هذا التصوير؟ No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 You want to go on to?
No, 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 no.
Mm.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, we need to, yeah.
My-
Share sound. Share sound. It's that one.
It is share sound. Where is
Yeah.
it? Where is it?
Share sound is there.
And where's the file? It's in the presentation.
It's a presentation, yeah. Yeah.
Go back to the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Where's your presentation? This one?
Mm-hmm.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the sound?
And the sound is under here. Move that. Move it down. Yeah. Yeah.
Where's the sound? Are you sure it's playing?
It's certainly played earlier. Don't worry, don't worry. We'll just have to do without it, but it's a shame.
Do you think you can say it instead of?
Well, I'll try and say it. I won't say it anywhere near as well as she did.
Here, something interesting.
And then I need presenter view. I need presenter view again.
I know. Okay. Okay.
I hope so. Okay.
أول شيء خذك من هنا.
How do I?
أول شيء من هنا أيوه بعدين خلاص الحين عاد استخدم بس.
Okay, yeah,
Okay, there's the hours.
yeah, okay, okay. So anyway, I would have had, if the sound had been working, yeah. Oh, right. Oh, I haven't got a microphone, have I? Is there a microphone?
There's a microphone actually.
Oh, it's over there. It's the wrong place. Okay. Can you hear me at the back? No? Is that the microphone? That's all good. Okay. Oh, so we moved it through the echo. So move it back. Okay. Yeah, let's hope that works now. So anyway, I had an example of some pausal nasalization, and the woman is saying, "Umaritaki dihling, ing dihling li ling, wa ibning, yeah." So we had this pausal nasalization. So there were quite a few things that I thought really interesting. Anyway, these are a few of the major outputs, the book outputs that I've done on Yemeni Arabic dialects. And yeah, so I arrived in Sana'a a long time ago. And I remember arriving and seeing the brightness of the light, the white light. It felt like a white light, 2,300 meters up, elevation up to 3,666 meters in the mountains. I'd never been that high. And coming into the old city. So my choice was to go to Yemen. Chance was coming into contact with the British Organisation for Community Development, who I worked with for a number of months and lived in the western mountains of Raima between Sana'a and Al Hodeida on the coast, living in a Turkish fort. When the sky was clear, this was so wonderful. I'd always travelled. My grandmother had travelled she started travelling when she was 48. And I remember thinking, it's not geographically I want to travel back in time. And it felt like I was travelling back in time because I was going to a place where there was no electricity and there was no running water. And that's what I wanted. Another parenthetical note, when I was 11, we were told to write little essays on our favourite, what we really wanted from life, what our ideal would be. And I wrote that there'd be no barbed wire, no cars, no paved roads, no electricity, and everyone would ride around on horses. That still seems ideal to me. Although you've got to be able to ride to be able to do that. So there in Raima, they had generators, which went off about 9 o'clock at night. And once the generators went off and you looked up into the sky, these stars, the stars were the size of apples. And I remember thinking I could put my hand out and pick them. I'm never going to have that again. Never. Never going to have that feeling of being so close to the rest of the universe. That closeness to nature and how it makes you feel. And then when we came down, there was a market to get lost in. Between 2000 and 2001, we lived in Sana'a, in the old city of Sana'a as a family. We lived basically in the market, just a little way off the market between Souq al-Irj and Souq al-Bakr. And it took me several weeks to work out how to get home. I used to have to ask the sellers, how do I get home? Where's Souq al-Irj? And they started to laugh at me in the end. But it's wonderful to get lost, because if you get lost, you find something out. If there's something you can't do, if you make a mistake and get lost, in order to get out of it, you have to learn something. And trust, taken from one trusted person to another. I remember the first time I went to Al Junayd near Ib. Ib's like south of Ta'iz, no, north of Ta'iz. So Al Junayd is southwest of Ib and northwest from Ta'iz. A very rural area, and it took about 12 hours by car to get there. It wasn't very far, but there were no paved roads. And my friend Halima took me to the taxi, and she said, you need to take care of her. Put me in the taxi. And then when I had to change taxi, the person I was sitting next to gave me to someone else. You need to take care of her. And he took me to the second person, was an old man. We had to stop halfway along because it was such a long way, and we'd started off late. And we stopped off at his daughter's village. And I thought, how does he know it's his daughter's village? I really hope he knows it's his daughter's village, because it was really dark. And he took me out and he said, yes, I know how to get there. We walked along and we found the house. And it was the house, that was lucky. And they hennaed my hands and feet. And then they put me on a bed which was made of, what do you call it, James? Like, yeah, it was off the ground. Yeah, they put me on the bed with my hands all wrapped up in stuff. And once I was lying down, they said, the problem with being on the bed is that's where the fleas bite. And I thought, oh no, I've got my hands like this, I've got my feet like this, and I've got the fleas. They were so wonderful though. Yeah, it was amazing. And then things that I remember from Yemen, this idea when you were driving through wadis driving towards the mountains, that the houses emerged from the rocks, from the mountains. You had to look carefully to see, are they rocks or are they houses? Because the houses were built out of the rocks from the mountains. I left in February 1987, and I remember the sadness at being torn away. It felt like being torn away, and the sadness of culture shock. Because if you're going to do fieldwork, you'll read something about culture shock. The culture shock you will feel when you go to another culture. What people don't talk about, I talk about it now, is the culture shock you feel when you go back to your culture and you realize you are no longer you. You have changed, but you look the same. And people will say, how are you? How long have you got? How long have you got? I remember just sitting and crying until my friend Khadija phoned up and she said, Abdullah Al-Jarrash is here, friend from Yemen. And I went over. The culture shock is far more poignant when you come home. And change. So I went back in 1991, in May 1991, and there was a sense of overwhelming sadness returning after the Second Gulf War. So much change in Elba and the areas of Sana'a, not the old city, but outside, that I knew. So much change that I no longer recognized these areas. And building had galloped towards Al-Hadad, towards the mountains. A huge influx of migrant workers expelled from Saudi and the Gulf due to Yemen's position over the Gulf War. I think it was 1/10 of the population, of the male population, worked abroad and brought remittances in. Yemen was a rich country when I first went there. It was 7 Yemeni rials to the pound. I had to be careful with my money. I don't know how many thousand it is to the pound now, but it's thousands. There was a surge in urbanization, a surge in building cars. If someone had come back, if a man had come back from the Gulf or from Saudi, if they'd come back with nothing, they'd come back with a car that was on its last legs. And massive poverty, which I hadn't seen before. Cholera was literally galloping up the mountains from Hodeidah. In 2001, I mentioned, no, it's probably 2000. In 2000, when we were planning to go to Yemen as a family, a student asked me, he didn't realize we were going over for a year, and he said, would you ever go to Yemen? I said, yeah, I'd go to Yemen. He said, are you scared? Now, in 1997, there was the killing of hostages in Abyan. Until 1997, I think, or 1990, one of those two. Until then, there had been no killing of hostages. No one had been harmed. People had been taken hostage until someone had been given a school. The area had been given a school or some other building. They'd been given what they wanted, and then they released the hostages. And they were really well cared for. And I used to say, if I'm taken hostage, as long as I've got my notebook and a pen and my recorder, I'm absolutely fine, except they'd probably have kicked me out after a couple of days. But this time, yeah, hostages were killed. So I was asked, was I frightened to go to Yemen? And I said, yeah, I'm absolutely petrified. What was I petrified of? I was petrified of the traffic. I was then, I am now, I always would be. My best friend lives in Ib. She's the same age as me, Yemeni. And I used to have to go to see her almost immediately I landed in Sana'a, because if I didn't go then, I would be too scared to deal with the Naqil tomorrow. It would just be too much. I couldn't cope with it. You'd go on this mountain pass and look down at car graveyards here and car graveyards there. And I remember once I decided that I was never going to go in a long distance taxi again. And that was because I'd come up from Ib to Sana'a in half the time it should have taken, literally half the time. And I thought, right, that's it, never, ever again. But then a week afterwards, I had to go to Abs in Bahama, And the only way to get there was by long distance taxi. You know, oh, I'll go. And I had someone over who I'd studied with in Exeter, who was over for a couple of weeks or so. And so we took this long distance taxi. And we were going up a hill. And for whatever reason, this taxi driver, we already knew that he was a bit nutty, but this taxi driver decided to overtake on the right. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. I get the overtake on the right by going up a slope. And then, so he's overtaking this lorry, and then he came in, and we thought, what on earth is he doing? As he overtook this lorry, another lorry came and crashed into the lorry we had just overtaken, tipping it into the path we would have been in had he not done that crazy maneuver. It was just extraordinary. Anyway, yeah, so if anyone ever asks me, am I scared of going to Yemen? Yes, absolutely petrified. So I've done, this is about audio recording and archiving. And my recording equipment and methods changed considerably over the years. And recording takes you back in time through the stories and traditions of people. When I first started, I used analog recording equipment, a large reel-to-reel recorder at one stage, and these small Walkmans. But I remember, apart from the large reel-to-reel, every time I went back, I had to get a new Walkman because it had broken. I then went on to mini discs, which stayed for a bit longer. This is a really nice recording, which unfortunately you won't be able to hear, but I could perhaps share the recording, share the presentation with you later. I don't think it will work, but we can see. Not working. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's Abdulsalam Al-Amri talking about the hammamat fi Sana'a, which we used to visit. I used to visit with the women's one with my daughter.
Public bathhouses?
Yeah, public bathhouses. They were amazing. And then 2001 to 2, I worked with the late and much missed Abdurrahman Mutahar to produce a bilingual volume on social issues in popular Yemeni culture based on the series that he wrote, Mus'ed Mus'eda. And he'd been doing it for about 20, 30 years or something. And it appeared every day on the radio. The radio is brilliant. Radio is so much better than television. You can just have it in your pocket. Yeah. I know we've got smartphones so you can see stuff now, but in those days, you just had it in your pocket. And this was the launch party of it. It was funded by the British Embassy and the Social Fund for Development, with the Mudir Abdul Karim Al-Arhabi and a lot of help from Nabil Muqala, who also worked at the Social Fund for Development. And this is me with the late and missed Abdulsalam Al-Amri, and we're reading a series that I'd produced in Arabic that I'd produced for this launch. And then one in English with Tim McIntosh Smith, my good friend, who'd been living in Sana'a from 1980, I think, or 1981, one of those two. This poem noted my departure from Sana'a in mid-2002. I did go back, but things were no longer the same. And I'll just go through this if I've got time. I know we're a bit late because we started late, but it doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned, unless it matters for you. قلش اشتري لك ذكريات تذكري كما تبصريهن في غيبتك وترجعي في أحلامك لبلاد الحضر والبادي. فقلت ما ذكريات ما حد يشتري، هن الحين محفوظات منقوشات في قلبي، وما دام ودم في عروقي دافي. فكيف أنساش يا بلد يا وطن عزائي، والوفا والنكش وتفرته والبوري والمداعة والقات والمقمرة والمشكري يا صنعاء يا آذى يا يمن سعيدة شسافر قريب بالنص قلبي وعفشي ونص قلبي الباقي فيما سميتها بلادي أنساش مش أنساش نهاية حياتي. That was a time of poetry. This is another one. I won't read this one. Maybe I will. It was just a time of loss, because when you gain and you move, you lose. And with loss, there's love. I woke early that morning, slipped back the wooden bolt, tugged it home by the rope, and went out with my son's hand in mine into the souk. Air crisp, sun sharp, bread from the tannour, rose, and the dust still low. And I cried in my heart that moment I knew would never return. That place, that space, that sight, that sense, that smell. Today my heart bleeds to remember that moment suspended in time. This is the last one, I will assure you. I left my heart in Sana'a. I slip in and out in my dreams and in my wakings, touching, yet not touching, my heart. Did I tell you the day I walked through the old city wearing the khimar? Shading, hazing, concealing, now revealing, now blurring, brushing the truth, reality, as I slipped through the city, dust-veiled, thinly disguised, through a city etched in the earth, centuries-old skyscrapers, stone, baked brick, lime-plastered windows, the Gamaria moon windows, jealously holding back the light, like my veil. I have mist in my eyes now, years later, now blurring, now revealing, and through blurring, not touching, but brushing so gently, reality. I started working on modern South Arabian in 2008. In all my work, there have been many children I've become fond of over the years, and this is my lovely Selim in 2019. I've known him since before he was born. My Yemeni children include Yasmin and Dunya. My recent Dhafari children include Al-Hussein, who taught me what it means to love on first sight. His brother Al-Hassan, little Abdullah, Huda and Mahdi. So the modern South Arabian languages, there are 6 languages. Hammal has done work on Harsusi, which you see in the top right. I mainly work on Mehri, which covers the main area, and on Sahrat, which is the darker area around by the Far. And there's also Socotra on the island and Hubyut across the Yemeni-Omani border. And thanks to Marie-Claude Simeon-Senel for the maps. So we're talking about different languages related to Arabic, but not mutually comprehensible. And we talked about chance, and we talked about choice, and we talked about change. But when I first came to work on modern South Arabian, it was fate that brought me here. My very good friend Alexander Sima, who I'd worked with in Heidelberg between 2002 and 2003. No, 2003, 2004. Was killed on the 3rd of September 2004 in a traffic accident. He was working on Mehri, and he was producing his habilitation, his postdoctoral thesis on Mehri texts. And I remember wanting to finish those texts, and I remember thinking he can't have died in vain. But I still think of him, and I still want to ask him things. In my dreams, I do. And in my dreams, I think if they'd told me earlier, I could have got out there and helped him. But of course I couldn't. We think that. And this is Askari Hugairan, who I stayed with in Al-Qaeda, and his family, with a very poor digital camera. And the most difficult thing I found there was sitting still. Because I'm not used to sitting still. I'm standing now. Then I went to the file, 2009. I'd edited and annotated Alexander Seamer's texts. I wanted to write a syntax of Mehri. But it was problematic to get back into him, even then. Saeed al-Mehri wrote me an email. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah, I need to turn on your camera first because we don't see you online.
Oh, that's absolutely fine. If you only see the slides, that's fine. Don't
Yeah,
worry. We can then put me online afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
How? I don't know how.
We just turn this off.
No, that's fine. It's up to you because they want to see you.
Yeah.
Your face.
They don't have to. They've seen my face often enough.
Where is it? Where?
Where?
Camera.
The camera?
لا 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 مش فاهم.
Zoom.
الصوت. الدكتور يعني ضروري.
خلاص مش فاهم.
مش مهم.
مش فاهم.
If we can do without salt, we can do without soda.
No, salt is very important. That's what
Yeah, for me. Yeah, but the تفجير.
Anyway, we can add to your.
Will add me at the end, yeah?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So for those online who actually wanted to see me, I'm very sorry about this, but never mind. So Saeed al-Mehri sent me an email after the publication of Alexander's texts to say thank you. And I said, oh, that's an idea. Maybe I could go to Salalah. And he said, yeah, hayabesh. So I first went to Salalah in 2009 and I haven't looked back. What's happened now?
We can this one is different.
Yeah, okay.
Can use these buttons here.
Yeah, I was doing those. Yeah. So the language varieties of the modern South Arabian languages got Mehri, Saheret, Bathari, which is critically endangered, probably only around 12, 15 speakers, Hubyut, severely endangered, and Tlanayit, which is a very unusual dialect of Arabic, which has quite a few modern South Arabian features in it. Interesting. So when you choose to do fieldwork, when you choose to work on something, most often it's some subjective reason that drives you there. You want to make it objective. You want to say that it's objective. It's very often something subjective that in the end pushes you in that direction, in that particular direction. But there were linguistic and cultural reasons for the choice. So these languages have large consonant inventories. They have lateral sibilants, which is great. Dual pronouns, the possessive pronouns, we'll have a look at those, quite interesting. Matrilineal, but lineages are both matrilineal and patrilineal. We'll have a look at that. And then in terms of quantification, you've got names and not numbers. Getting through that? Yeah, okay. Okay. So I'm going to have to say this rather than these words rather than Abdullah because the sound isn't coming through. So you've got in addition to sat and shat, you've got lateral shat. In Mehri. In Saheret, you've got sat, shat, and shat. Which is fun really. But I found it quite difficult because I've got a lisp. So sibilants are not great for me. Anyway, so we've got Siwart, that's that, Tliaft, for the old Arabic thought. We know from looking at the maps of the mouth by Giorgiani and others that they were lateral, Tliaft, and they are in Tlanate. Amaret, and then cha, you've got this a sound which you just don't get in Arabic, chnaif, chalate, and a violet. Huh? Yeah. but some are more ejective than others. And you can see how many more sounds that you have in Mehri and Shahrat than you do in Arabic. What's happening here? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so this is the three sounds, and this was Muhammad al-Mahri saying ish, to stand up. The dual pronouns. The dual pronouns are interesting because no other extant language, Semitic language, has a dual pronoun for me and someone else. And in fact, the dual pronouns, you get them in classical Arabic, get them in standard Arabic, but you don't get them in any dialect. Yeah. And they come in the verb system, they come as dependent and independent pronouns. And you can see all the different terms, all the different things there. So okay, ate, hey, kaloki, kalehi. Yeah, so you've got these dual pronouns. And then the possessive pronouns are interesting because when you have a possessive pronoun in one of the languages that takes a definite article, they don't all take definite article. So some don't have the article at all. If it takes a definite article, then if you have a possessive pronoun, you've got to have the definite article as well. Yeah? So you've got Kaboyal, Akboyal, the tribes, Akbeliham, their tribes. Tliaft, Atliaft, Atliafti, my wedding. Chaig, Achaigi. Yeah? Arabic, you've got Al-Makan or Makanak. You can't have Al-Makanak, an English the place. You can't have the my place. But there are lots of languages which do have both. So Norwegian, you've got Moren, his mother, Moren, the mother. Moren, me, my mother, the mother, my. Italian, la casa and la mia casa, the my house. So that's quite fun. And Galician, anei, aminia. How am I doing for time? Because I know I'm not even looking.
We're starting a little bit late, so we can finish a little bit late.
Yeah, okay, but what is it? How much longer have I got?
Usually have like around 6 minutes.
Yeah.
But we can take like up to 10 minutes.
Okay, fine.
I think you can
Yeah.
finish.
Fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So lineages and names. So lineages follow the father's line. And as with Bedouin throughout the peninsula, young men, or boys in particular, are taught their lineages so they can recite their lineages, and they can recite more than 18 generations. But, and then this was a recording of Saeed, Bar Ahmed, Bar Ubqaid, Bar Salim, Bar Saeed, Bar Amr, Bar Salim, Bar Saeed, Bar Ali, Bar Tamim, Bar Shagul, etc., etc. But informally, men are known as their given name plus their mother's name. Yeah? So, Bar Uqyar, Bar Tfo, Bar Fatmat. Yeah? Women are known as Bert plus their father's name. So I'm known as Bert Peter. Peter, my father's name. Yeah? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Names, not numbers. I'm going to skip that, I think. Yeah, and these are book and archive. Which USB? Oh, this one. Do you want it? Yes. Yeah. So books and archives that I've produced with others on modern South Arabian. And throughout, I've been going back in time through the stories of people living in caves, fetching fodder, foraging, fetching water, the different types of water sources that you find. I remember we went to Gibgabit in the mountains, between the mountains and the top of the central plateau. And Ali said, "Look down there. You see that indent in the rock? When water came, my mother would send Miriam down to fetch the water from there. That's the mahlik." Yeah, stories of fending off Arabian leopards. And I've got quite a few of those. Women fending them off, men fending them off. And a tremendously meticulous collaborative system for building shelters, building huts, building homes. And today people continue to share milk products and expertise. And although you can buy camel milk, and you can buy cow milk, it's always felt that you should give your guest milk. I remember when I first went there, they said, if we were to come to your house, would you milk for us? And I said, well, I haven't actually got anything to milk. I've got 2 guinea pigs, but they're male guinea pigs and they don't really have any milk. Yeah, men milk camels and cows, and Mehri women milk goats, but Shahrat women do not milk. And this is actually pretty difficult because you have to stand on one leg. Trying to do it. You have to stand on one leg, balance your foot on your knee in order to hold the milking bowl and milk into the milking bowl without dropping it and hoping that the camel doesn't kick out.
You could use the high chair.
Yeah, that would be cheating. And the clean, straight lines of modernity. Salalah and Bafar have changed greatly since I first went in late 2009. So I've been involved in language revitalization and collaboration with people. This is Saeed al-Shahri and Saeed al-Mahri. And this is the first text that we had transcribed using the new orthography, because as you saw earlier, there are more symbols in Arabic, there are more sounds in Shahrat than there are in Arabic. So we had to come up with new characters. And the person who I recorded, we went up to Zeke to record him, and he'd given permission to record, and he'd given permission to use the text in the archive. And I said, would you mind if people heard your voice? And he said, I've recorded this for you. Your duty is to disseminate it as wide as possible. So we made sure that this was the first text about a wedding that we had transcribed and disseminated. Yeah, and then this is what we've been working on recently, children's books. So we've got about 5, 6 ebooks. The ebooks we did with photographs, but then people said, we need to do a book which you could hold in your hand, which has got pictures. And we didn't want to do it with photographs. It would have been difficult to do it with photographs. It's about a little boy and his grandmother. You can't really do it with photographs. So we had to get an illustrator, and that took ages. So it actually took longer to produce this than it did to produce Tokam Afiyet. Until we found the illustrator. And now we've got another one which is in press, which is called, you can show them around if you want, which is called Selim Hears. So this is about a boy who's really forgetful. And he's supposed to be taking a leather satchel to his grandmother. So he goes from his cave, from his mother's cave, to his grandmother's cave with the leather satchel. And she said, don't forget it again. Please don't forget it. And he goes on, he gets tired, and he gets to an acacia tree. He's tired, so he wants to lie down. He hangs up the leather satchel in the tree. And then when he wakes up, he goes on. And he's forgotten the satchel. And then he jumps over a puddle. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then his shadow gets tired from jumping. So his shadow just lies down. And he gets to his grandmother's and she says, you've forgotten the satchel again, haven't you? And he said, yeah. And she said, go and get it. And on your way, find your shadow. So it's about how he finds his shadow. And then distance collaboration was something that I couldn't do when I was working in Yemen. If I needed to get extra data, I used to write to my friend, Tim McIntosh Smith, by letter. Yeah, send it and wait for a response. So it generally took about a month to get the letter over and to get the response. And I had to make sure that I'd asked what I really needed to ask. It's so much easier now.
It was in Yemen.
Yeah, that was in Yemen. Yeah. And during the COVID period, it was a really difficult time, but there was something really good about it, because suddenly you could do online meetings with people in Yemen and people in Oman. And we did online meetings. We had about 35 online meetings between 23rd of March 2020, which was when we went into lockdown in the UK, and September that year. And then we carried on with them, with this distance collaboration, which is just as well, because it kept me sane. The thought of not being able to come back here was just killing me. And we had, because it was online, we could have participants from all over the place. We even, for one meeting, had participants from California and Australia. Now, it was really difficult to get the timing right for that, because the distance between us and Australia is 12 hours that way, and it was 8 hours that way for California. It was, yeah. And then when I've done online collaboration with my UK collaborators, 2020, 2021 online teams. And then I'm now working with someone in the States, Sarah Brewster, and with Kamala Russell. So choice, you've got the choice where you want to do your work, and chance, take the chances when you can, and things change, but fate plays a role as well. And I just want to mention one other instance of chance. My friend Halima, I'd been out of touch with her from 2008 when she moved house. And she didn't have, at least I didn't have a number for her. I used to phone up the neighbours and they would say, call back in half an hour and we'll fetch her. And she'd moved and I couldn't get through to her. Then 2020, I was in Muscat just before COVID. And Salim Al-Harazi from Yemen was here and he wanted to meet me. And then as I met him, he said, we want to do an interview with you. And I said, where's the interviewer from? And he said, Ib. I said, you're from Ib. I'll do an interview with you, because she was from Ib. And I said, I've been looking for Halima all this time, 12 years. I need to know how she is, where she is. I need to know about her. And then about a month later, when I was home, I got an email from Bashir. And he said, I'm Bashir. I'm Halima's son. And she wants to talk to you. And I spoke to her that afternoon. And we're still in touch. And if Halima is listening, you're still in my heart and you always will be. And these are acknowledgements to funders over the years, to my teachers, to my friends and collaborators, people in Yemen, and people in Afar. And there will be many, many more who I couldn't fit in. But that is my story. Thank you.
Did we fix the camera?
Yeah, do you want to do that? Yeah, how do we do that?
No, you want to zoom and get just to switch on it.
Oh yeah, switch on the video.
Very easy.
Oh yeah. Could have done that. Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
so I shall leave it.
Yeah.
That's good. I can see you, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this speech. I was inspired, I was touched, but I learned a lot, especially that I'm not very familiar with the South Modern Arabian languages. So I got a mini course in these languages. So I would like to open the floor to the audience to ask questions. We have girls from Dhafar.
Brilliant.
So if you're from Dhafar, can you raise your hand? She wants to ask something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
when you mentioned that, we actually said special silence.
Yeah.
And once we actually, they said that this actually show us
What we're doing about the problem with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it depends on whether you're talking to Barry or Mehdi. Yeah, exactly. So you'd say Esh Khalid.
actually one thing.
Yeah.
We actually said.
Yeah.
It's also showing us that the women that we actually emphasize the role of the women.
Exactly.
From a very
Secret.
century, which shows us that a lot of people from the farm excess about the women, especially in
I agree. Yeah.
and they feel like
Oh, can you just turn it off or something?
yeah.
Oh, what's happening?
It's fine, no problem. No worries.
But what? Okay. Are we still on? Are we still on or not?
We are still on, no problem.
How?
We are on, no worries.
Okay, yeah.
Technology.
Okay, good. Yeah, and you'll get people who, in their passports, they will have the name of a great grandmother in their passports. In people's passports, you will have the name of a great grandmother, where we would have to say
دكتورة
grandmother or great grandmother.
اسمعي
If someone wants to competition here, you said
عندك هنا اسمعي
Absolutely. Yeah.
والله ما عرفت كيف احركها.
Okay, thank you. Do you have other questions? Yes, at the back.
Well, I have two questions. First of all, one of the questions is personal, the other is from your PowerPoint slides.
Yeah.
You talked about that cultural shock. What do you mean by cultural shock when you return back to your hometown? You said, do you mean like you were surprised of how simple life you were interacting with, and then you went to the fast, rapid, complicated life? Was that the cultural shock that you have experienced?
Culture shock.
Where is
Yeah.
it from?
So where's culture shock?
Yeah. So the culture shock, what was the culture shock? Yeah, it was going, I think it was going from a situation where I was sitting and talking to people most of the day, and suddenly I wasn't. Because we don't. Well, I was living in London. You don't in London. Yeah. And it's apparently one of the symptoms of happiness. One of the indicators of happiness is how much you interact with people. And you might find it yourself. If you spend 2 days at home and you don't see anyone, how do you feel at the end of that? Probably pretty rubbish. I do. Yeah.
And the other question is about the 18 generations that you mentioned about.
Yeah.
How is it able to, let's say, how is the impact of 18 generations on the community, in the sense of community and historical continuity sense?
Yeah, because people will say, "Oh, he's my cousin," and I say, "Oh, he's the son of your father's brother." I'd say, "No," but we go back. We share a great grandfather, or we share a great grandfather. We go back to book. So I have friends from Beit Samuda, and I have friends from Beit Zawat, and I probably speak Mehri Beit Zawat, although I started with Beit Samuda. So I will say, okay, well, I'm not Beit Samuda, and I'm not Beit Zawat, I'm Beit Boki, because Boki came before Samuda and Zawat.
When you see this is going to impact how people are going to identify the source or from where their family or timeline is heading towards?
What do you mean heading?
Timeline, where the family's timeline is heading about the generations.
Yeah.
Don't you think that this is going to, let's say, impact of people acknowledging the fact where they're coming from?
So they acknowledge, people are really aware of their ancestry in a way that we certainly aren't. My mother's family have a family tree that goes back, I think, to the 13th century, but not very many people do in the West. And most people can't name their great-grandfather.
I get it. Thank you.
Yeah?
Yes. Thank you for your time.
Yes, hello. Go ahead.
Yes, I had a question concerning like doing fieldwork as a also a Western scholar.
Yeah.
Like, what did you learn in terms of doing fieldwork as a person from the West? Like, because in our institutes, like in Germany, it's also a widely sometimes discussed topic. Like, because it like there's a lot of sensibility needed going as a Western scholar. So I was interested. What are maybe the most important things you've learned during your time doing fieldwork?
I'm often wrong.
Is it?
I'm often wrong. Yeah, mistakes that one makes. When I went to do fieldwork and when James went to do fieldwork, we weren't given any fieldwork training at all. Just told to go out. And I started off as a theoretical linguist, and I went to Yemen thinking that I could just get the phonetics and phonology and morphology of a language and not bother about the culture. And I pretty soon realised you cannot do that. You cannot separate them. Yeah.
Can I ask you? Oops.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Professor Watson. This was very enjoyable, actually, to listen to your story. And I think you should write a memoir if you haven't thought about it.
That's what my son says.
You have to, and you include the poems, actually. My question is very simple, not as complicated as Abdullah.
Yeah.
What made you decide here, for example, in this story, not to include Arabic, only include Mehri and English? Like, why Arabic was excluded here? So I'm just interested in that. And thank you.
To push people. To push people, yeah, because if you got the Arabic, you'd just have read the Arabic.
That's true. That's
yeah,
true,
you'd have read the Arabic. Thought, it's a nice story, but you wouldn't have bothered. We've got we do have a link to the ebook of this as well, so you can listen to it too. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
Professor Watson, thank you so much. I have also one simple question. I mean, it seems you have been returning to the same area for a few times. Coming from the perspective of language variation and change, would you say that you have noticed any kind of ongoing change in the communities that you visited in their language use?
Yeah.
And
well, I have a few women friends who, when I first went out, were really monolingual Mehri speakers. And now I find that one of them in particular, she will use, I mean, she can use all the numbers in Mehri, but she will often revert to Arabic now.
So besides that, also the Mehri as on its own, do you think the younger generations, for example, do they use the same way of like phonological sounds? Are there any kind of changes? Are there any sorts of linguistic changes that are observable in their languages?
There's change in terms of, I think, less in terms of the sounds and the way in which they pronounce things, and more in terms of the lexicon that they have, because they're no longer engaging with the environment that was the environment of the Mahra, which was an outside environment. We shouldn't be inside this box. Yeah, people should not be inside a box. We should be outside. Yeah. It's rather difficult to be outside when there are so many millions of us now, and that's the reason, I think, why you've got urbanisation, because it's easier to be people who are all together than it is when they're scattered around. I think that's probably the case. But ideally, we would be outside. We would be sleeping in the wadi, we would be sleeping in caves. That's what I would really like. And that was one thing that I've meant to say, that I often say to my really good women friends who are a bit older, I said, come on, let's go back. Let's go back 40 years. Let me take you by the hand. Let's go back 40 years, even if just for one day. And I remember Rukhya saying to me, what happens if we get stuck? You'll adapt. You reckon? I might adapt, but she might not be too happy about it. Yeah.
My question is related to Dr. Najma. So she asked about having the Arabic, but I think maybe if we had at least the phonetic transcription, so we would it would be easier to know how to pronounce the words.
Yeah.
Like this could like ease up the pronunciation of the words, but like we can see the word, but we still don't know how to pronounce.
Yeah, well, if I give you the URL to the ebook, then you'll be able to listen to it and go through it. Yeah, yeah. We have this book translated into, so that it was still Mehri, but it wasn't English. It was Mehri and Galician, which is a minority language spoken in northern Spain, and it's also being translated into Irish Gaelic, so into other minority languages. And with that, we have the URL at the beginning of the page for the Galician version and for the Mehri version.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, okay. Yeah. Want to go before? Just go ahead. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you, Professor, for your presentation. It was amazing. So you mentioned that you had a gap between, you have disconnected from them, you returned to, I don't remember where, UK, then you returned back to Sana'a, and so in that period of disconnection, did you notice something like have changed in the language and the culture, and if there was a change, was there a relation between the language changes and the culture in particular?
I didn't talk to or interview enough people to be able to make that distinction. But when I went back in 1991, which was after the Gulf War, when I think it was 1 million migrant workers were kicked out of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf, and the change was enormous. The change was absolutely enormous. Sana'a was small, but most of the migrant workers who left, they left from rural villages in the mountains. And when they came back to the towns. So they changed the rural-urban balance. And that will have an effect on the language, on the dialects. You start to develop coinage.
So the Arabic dialects or also the
We're talking about Arabic here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
I have a question. What's the restrictions that you face as we consider the areas that you went to, conservative areas or conservative societies?
Yeah. So she's asking about the kind of restrictions, obstacles you face because you went to areas which are conservative in nature.
When I was in Yemen, I wore dresses down to here and sarwal, which I had made there and covered my hair. So I made sure that I followed the dress code, and I lived with families. I think having fleas walking across my face was one thing that I didn't like. I remember that once. Washing my clothes in the stream, I remember in Al Junaid, which was wonderful. Washing them and beating them against the rocks and then drying them out. But that stream's dried up now, which is a shame. I found it difficult carrying wood and carrying solvent. I did it. I didn't have to do it.
You wanted to be part of it, yes.
Were people willing to talk to you in the beginning, or were they hesitant?
Yeah, some people were maybe hesitant, and then after I left one particular area, they said, "Oh, she's a spy." They tried to other people tried to yeah.
This is why there's
Yeah.
Yes, so my question is about your pronunciation of the sounds, especially the sounds that are not in English. I mean, the pa, the ha, and such sounds.
Yeah.
How did you manage to pronounce it accurately as an Arabic speaker?
By listening and listening and listening and sitting with people for hours and hours and hours, and then correcting me.
These sounds are very difficult for non-native speakers of Arabic.
You're talking about Arabic sounds, or you're talking about Mehri sounds?
The past and the ha, these sounds difficult in English.
They're a piece of cake compared to the Mehri and that ones.
But they're all difficult, right?
I think any language is difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, it is true that certain languages must be a bit easier than others. Amharic is pretty tough in terms of syntax. But I think any language is difficult. I think you just have to listen and listen and listen and listen and listen. It's like a poet said, if you want to write good poetry, read and read and read and read. If you want to speak well, listen and listen and listen. Yeah.
Sorry for the interrupting again. So I'm
It's mine, by the way, it's mine. My student. Okay.
So I'm studying literature and I'm studying literature as analyzing stories. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we do is study the motive of the hero, the motive of the hero.
Yeah.
The journey of the hero.
Yeah.
So what initiated your journey in studying this field of culture and heritage, and what was your goal, or should I say in another word, reward of your journey?
I loved languages. I wanted to learn a language about a region I didn't know anything about, which is why I studied Arabic in the first place. I love mountains and walking. And my friend Louise was born in Yemen. So that was the motivation for doing.
That was the motivation. And
yeah.
Through the journey, because we're studying Joseph Campbell's the monuments
Yeah.
So through the journey, we crossed the threshold. We went from London to Yemen.
Yeah.
And then the adventure began. So.
Yeah.
And have you got allies in enemies, for example?
Have I got what?
Allies and enemies.
Have I allies or enemies?
Yeah, because you're the hero of that journey.
I have
both.
I have allies. I have allies. I have my friends.
Okay.
I have my Mehri friends. On this with Abdullah is on this book is one of the biggest rewards, and seeing people's faces when they look at it, and hearing parents reading the book to their child, and then the child coming and not wanting the phone but wanting the book to be read to them again and again and again.
I just want to have one final note. I mean, would you consider giving the recordings that you have for a corpus to initiate a corpus?
I have got it. We've got a corpus. Yeah. So the Semitic Sound Archive. I have my Yemeni recordings on that.
This is great.
And some of the Mehri and Sahrat. And then in Ela, I have the Mehri and Sahrat recordings. So the recordings are there, including video recordings.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Yes, mine was related to what Saad mentioned. Thank you very much for your presentation once again. It was about the fieldwork itself. A lot of fieldwork, especially in English or even language, when go to the field, they face this problem of not being accepted by the society.
Yeah.
So are there any kind of piece of advice or tricks that you've done that made you welcome to the society where you've been? Because you've been in more than one place, and
yeah.
James has been there.
Yeah.
So what was that kind of charm that you had?
James, what's my charm? I've always spoken to people.
Yeah.
Always. Like if I'm sitting on a bus in the UK, I will talk to the person who's sitting next to me. They may not always want to talk to me. Yeah, but yeah, I'll talk to people.
So opening up and talking, trying to
And we have so much in common, although there is so much difference, and we have so much in common. So I tell stories about my grandmother and about my mother and about my father. And now that I've got a granddaughter, I show people that are different ages. Yeah. So we have whatever the differences, whatever cultural differences we have, we're held together by far more than we have in common. And it's spotting that.
I've heard it from some other ladies when they have issues of not being accepted in the society, getting adapted and everything. It's like you first have to be part of it.
Yeah.
Then you will get.
And don't hurry it. You don't need to hurry it. It's better to not get the data than to get the data and fall out with someone.
We're actually doing this ethnographic work, language and society.
Uh-huh.
We're doing fieldwork methods.
Okay.
So we're talking about the difference, like pros and cons with like sociolinguistic interviews, anonymous observation, and ethnographic work. So your work is mostly ethnographic in nature because you're integrated in the community, and all of the data you presented is something you can get only if you are one of them actually. So it's very important to and be integrated in the community itself before you even start to study it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that was one.
I think also learning to speak the language, because I've always wanted to speak the language.
Yes, definitely.
And I always wanted to speak the only Arabic dialects. Yeah. And I think a lot of people say.
Well, that's the question, maybe?
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to be leaving. Yeah, we have it soon. Yes, definitely.
Thank you for your presentation. I noticed something that what you are wearing is similar to what they wear in Yemen and culture.
Yeah, it's safari.
Yes. Do you used to wear like this before or after?
I wore a baya and hijab in Yemen.
Yes, before I'm in UK.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, thank you. I wasn't wearing hijab then.
Yeah. And see, this is part of the integration into the society, looking like one actually. Yes, definitely. So we have on this week, I put online application.
So how many people attended? I was there. Oh,
She says you have to buy it. Yeah. You just want to see?
Say hello to you.
Thank you everyone for attending.
Yes, 1 second. We're talking to our audience online first.
Okay.
We have online audience as well.
Okay. So, do you want to take pictures with Professor Janet or? Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Yes.
زي امبارح يوم الجمعة
You were also taking part in the research, or no, really? No, I have some research projects, but in which field, like a similar field or in a different? I do some stuff in translation studies, and I do things on Sudanese Arabic. Okay, well, like also in the linguistic field. you're learning Arabic. How's that?